Some big announcements for AEW, and we're going to talk about a released WWE star returning, plus so much more right here on The Ango Show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to TAS. Don't forget, we do got a giveaway at 100,000 subscribers. I want to kick things off with an update on Ridge Holland. It looks like he's not actually retiring. So I made a video on this during NXT. Ridge Holland cut this really emotional promo going through mental health battles. And this guy, he says he's stepping away from the ring. And, it was interesting. It was an interesting promo. The way they shot it, it looked and felt real. It felt really organic, to be honest with you. Like, I was waiting for the swerve to happen. And that didn't happen, right? The way they filmed it, I mean, it really looked like Ridge Holland was saying goodbye. And it's kind of cool to have moments like this in wrestling. But now there was a new report that came from Corey Brennan from Fightful Select that suggested that this is, in fact, part of a storyline. So for those who are saddened by his retirement, well, now you don't have to be sad anymore. And for those who wished he did retire, well, unfortunately for you, he's going to be coming back and killing it. And I think this is cool, man. They've been telling this story for a minute now. It's a story with substance, and it feels like it's, it feels real. And I think those kinds of stories typically do well on television. I think people do get bought into those. And obviously with Ridge, having injured Big E in real life, there was a lot of pushback from the online fans, right? Because he obviously hurt Big E unintentionally, and then they ran an angle on television with him and Ilya Dragunov, and it was one of those things where they just kind of made it seem a lot of fans felt it was too sensitive to do that. And ultimately, I think wrestling, is better when you creep into the boundaries of real world stuff. And this is one of those things where Ridge retiring could actually be a really good storyline for him specifically. He's no longer with Pete Dunne. He's no longer with Sheamus on SmackDown. That faction, the Brawling Brutes, is no longer a thing. He's in NXT. You have a whole bunch of people flourishing in the mid card of NXT. This is something that could be potentially good. Now, obviously, I don't want to jump the gun and say that it is going to be good storytelling without it seeing how the next steps happen. Because when you do touch on sensitive subjects like this, I think you got to be careful in how you actually execute it. But I think it has the potential to be something special. And I genuinely like when I'm worked in wrestling. I do. Talking about that video, I was kind of confused, right? Like, it just seemed like everybody was waiting for the swerve and it didn't happen. Obviously, there is more to come. So I do appreciate that aspect of it. But we'll keep it moving. Ladies and gentlemen, Riddick Moss is returning to pro wrestling. There was a new announcement today with Riddick Moss, aka Madcap Moss. He is returning to the ring. There was an announcement on social media. OPW, it's happening. I believe this is Australia, Victoria, Australia. But during StarCast, basically, there's going to be a championship match. It is the Stu Hart Heritage Championship, and Chris Masters, who is the current champion, will be going up against Mike Rallis, aka Riddick Moss, Madcap Moss. And this is actually interesting because we haven't seen him return to pro wrestling since being released by the WWE. And I've always kind of wondered, I'm like, why isn't Riddick Moss on TV? I watched him in the early days of NXT. I seen him go to the main roster. I see Vince McMahon make him Madcap Moss. I see this stuff with Baron Corbin. I'm like, this guy is just not being utilized correctly. I feel like regardless if you like these other companies or not, I feel like a guy with his look and athleticism, yeah, he should be able to flourish pretty much anywhere. We haven't seen him show up in TNA, NWA, MLW, GCW. We didn't see him in AEW. It's a little interesting to me. It really is a little interesting to me. But I do like the fact that he's coming back. I like the fact that he's going to be in the ring. Obviously, StarCast is a pretty big deal. StarCast going to Australia is a pretty big deal. OPW is a promotion out there in Australia as well. So this is going to be a cool thing to see. As time goes on, what happens? How does this what's the trickle down effect from this, right? And I hope this is not just Madcap Moss or Riddick Moss just taking indie bookings, but I hope it leads to him getting a shot somewhere. Keep in mind, him and Tennille Dashwood are together. Tennille Dashwood, for those who don't know, is also known as Emma in the WWE when she was there. They're together, so maybe there is a potential possibility that, you know, she goes back to TNA and then they bring Madcap with her to the company. I don't know, but I want to see something happen, man. This kid is way too talented to not be doing anything in wrestling. Way too talented to not be on TV. You're seeing people leave TNA. You know, he could be somebody that goes into TNA. You know, it was always kind of weird to me that Triple H didn't even utilize him. He was from NXT and he was part of Triple H's, like, you know, he came from the era of when Triple H was running NXT. So I was always a little shocked that maybe even Triple H didn't bring him back or whatever. But there's not a lot of people who got released, man. I mean, I feel like the only two people who got released most recently was Top Dollar and Dana Brooke, and those two seem to be actually making moves post WWE. So I was a little bit shocked by some of the others not necessarily following up. And that brings us to our final topic. Tony Khan making some announcements today. There's a couple of big changes that you guys need to expect for AEW. This one is not so much a big announcement because it is kind of expected, but AEW is returning to Double or Nothing, or bringing Double or Nothing back to Las Vegas. Okay, that's cool. That's huge. Obviously, we should expect that at this point every year. Tony Khan loves his tradition. I'm cool with that, right? So Memorial Day weekend, tradition, AEW Double or Nothing, cool. The day before that, because that's going to be on Sunday, the night before, it's going to be AEW Collision, which is also taking place in Las Vegas. And then, look, they got a whole bunch of stuff happening that weekend. But the big thing here is that AEW is now broadcasting their pay-per-views on Triller TV for the rest of this quarter. So AEW Dynasty is taking place obviously later in April, and AEW Dynasty will be available for purchase on Triller TV in America, which normally isn't like that, right? We normally have to use Bleacher Report Live. Now AEW is giving you the chance to purchase it from both platforms. Now, for those who don't understand why this is such a huge deal, Bleacher Report Live has pretty much been a shitty service that AEW has been utilizing since day one, and it's very inconsistent. And there was issues in the last pay-per-view and previous pay-per-views before that. So ultimately, during the last pay-per-view, AEW had Fight TV or Triller TV. It's the same thing. They basically had them midway through start broadcasting the pay-per-view on their platform for Americans. So obviously for AEW to finish off the quarter with these pay-per-views being broadcasted on Triller, I think it's a great thing. It's more accessible, a little bit more reliable as well. And for AEW, I think it could help greatly. I think the only reason why we're seeing this for the quarter is because I do believe AEW All In 2 will be streamed on Max. We'll see if it happens. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think down below.